My name is Olivia Anderson, I'm 42, and I came home to celebrate the biggest promotion of my career, only to find my husband in our bed with my own sister. Before I tell you about the calculated revenge that cost them everything they had, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Thank you for being here with me today. I hope you're having a wonderful day. I love seeing where my stories travel, so please, feel free to share what city you're tuning in from. It really does make my day. Now, let me take you back to that afternoon. The afternoon my life split into a before and an after. It was a Tuesday. Just after 3 o'clock. The Denver skyline was sharp against a brilliant blue sky, but I barely noticed. My heart was a drum against my ribs, a rhythm of pure, unadulterated triumph. I'd just walked out of the Sterling Price law firm, not just as a senior litigator, but as a senior partner. The words still echoed in my ears, spoken by a man I'd respected for 20 years. Olivia, this promotion is long overdue. No one deserves it more. The last 6 months had been a blur of 60-hour work weeks, fueled by black coffee and the sheer will to win the Sterling Pharma case. And I had. We had. The settlement was historic. My bonus alone was enough to finally silence the financial worries that had been a low hum of anxiety in our home for the last year. My husband, Mark, had been so stressed. His new marketing venture, he'd said, was a cash drain. So many late nights, so many hushed, worried phone calls. I'd worked myself to the bone not just for the promotion, but for us. For him. To give him the breathing room he needed. A bottle of Veuve Clicquot sat on the passenger seat next to me, cold to the touch. I couldn't wait to see his face. I pictured it all. I'd walk in, pop the cork, and tell him that our money problems were over. Then I'd tell him about the surprise trip to Napa Valley I'd booked for our anniversary. A week of sunshine and wine, just the two of us. Pulling into our driveway in the Washington Park neighborhood, a flicker of confusion hit me. Mark's silver BMW was already there. That was strange. His Tuesday client meetings always ran late. Always. I shrugged it off. Maybe his meeting ended early. Maybe he came home to surprise me. A smile touched my lips as I grabbed the champagne and my briefcase. The house was quiet as I let myself in. Too quiet. Mark? I called out, setting my things down in the entryway. Honey, I'm home. No answer. Only the faint, rhythmic creak of the floorboards from upstairs. Then I saw them. The first breadcrumb in a trail leading to the destruction of my world. His size 11 Italian leather shoes, the ones I'd bought him for his birthday, kicked carelessly aside by the front door. I frowned. Mark was meticulous. He never just left his shoes there. My eyes followed the path forward. His navy blazer was draped over the banister, hanging there like a surrender flag. A few steps up the grand staircase, his white button-down shirt lay twisted, as if it had been ripped off in a hurry. My blood ran cold. A knot of pure dread tightened in my stomach. I started up the stairs, my hand gripping the wooden banister, each step feeling heavier than the last. The creaking from our bedroom was louder now, accompanied by a low murmur of voices. No, not voices. A voice. A woman's voice. My logical lawyer brain tried to find an explanation. The TV? A podcast? But I knew. Deep in my gut, I knew. I reached the top of the stairs. The sound was coming from our bedroom, the door slightly ajar. And it wasn't just a voice anymore. It was a moan. A soft, breathless sound that made the hair on my arms stand up. Then I heard his voice, a deep groan that was all too familiar. My hand froze, hovering over the brass doorknob. My breath hitched in my throat. I stood there, paralyzed, just inches away from the scene of my life's demolition. And then I heard her again. She cried out his name, and in that single, passion-soaked sound, I recognized the voice. It wasn't the voice of a stranger. It wasn't the voice of some anonymous woman. It was the voice of my sister, Chloe. The world didn't just stop. It shattered into a million silent pieces. The air was sucked from my lungs. It felt like a punch to the gut, so swift and brutal I couldn't even make a sound. My own sister. In my house. In my bed. With my husband. Every memory of her sisterly advice flashed through my mind. You work too much, Liv. Mark feels neglected. You two need to reconnect. All of it, a lie. A sick, twisted performance. I should have screamed. I should have thrown that door open and rained down hellfire upon them. Every primal instinct told me to unleash the hurricane of fury and pain that was building inside me. But I didn't. Something else took over. Something cold and quiet and precise. I took one step back from the door. Then another. My movements were silent, deliberate. I let them finish. I let them have their sordid little moment, because in that instant of pure, unadulterated betrayal, I knew one thing with absolute certainty: they could have this moment, but the ending of this story, the real ending, belonged to me. I backed away, down the hall, my feet moving on autopilot. I slipped into the guest bathroom, the one directly across from our bedroom, and softly closed the door, not even daring to click the lock. The sounds were still audible through the wall, a muffled rhythm of my heartbreak. My hand was shaking, but my mind was suddenly, terrifyingly clear. My thumb swiped across the screen of my phone, past the call logs, past my messages, and stopped. I pressed the small, red circle on the screen of the voice recording app. The timer on my phone's screen glowed, 2 minutes and 37 seconds. 2 minutes and 37 seconds of the ugliest truth I had ever known, captured in a digital file. The sounds from across the hall finally stopped, replaced by a silence that was somehow louder, heavier. I could hear the shower turning on. Cleaning up the evidence. As if they could wash away what they'd done. I leaned my head back against the cool tile of the bathroom wall, my own breathing ragged in my ears. The world outside that door had ceased to exist. There was only the ringing in my ears and a slideshow of memories, now tainted and grotesque, playing on a loop behind my eyes. 6 months ago. That's when it started. I remembered the night perfectly. We were sitting at the kitchen island, a half-empty bottle of wine between us. I was exhausted, fresh off a 14-hour day of depositions. Mark was swirling his glass, a troubled look on his face. Liv, he'd said, his voice low. We need to talk about money. He laid it all out. His marketing firm was struggling to land a big client. Cash flow was tight. But he had an idea, a side venture he called Apex Innovative Solutions. It was brilliant, he said. A guaranteed win. He just needed a little seed money to get it off the ground. A business loan. It's our future, honey, he'd whispered, taking my hand. His eyes were so sincere. Just a little boost to get us over the hump. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. I trusted him. Of course, I trusted him. He was my husband, my partner. The next day, I went to the bank with him. I watched as my signature went onto the paperwork next to his. $150,000. I felt a pang of anxiety, but then I looked at his hopeful face, and I pushed it down. We were a team. This is what teams do. Around the same time, Chloe started coming over more. My beautiful, vibrant little sister, the successful lifestyle influencer. She'd sit with me on my back porch, a cup of herbal tea in her hands, her brow furrowed with concern. You look tired, Liv, she'd say, her voice dripping with sympathy. You're working too much. I'd laugh it off. The Sterling Pharma case is a monster. It'll be over soon. But what about Mark, she'd press, leaning in conspiratorially. He just seems so distant lately. He told me he feels neglected. Are you sure you're not pushing him away? I felt a flash of defensiveness, then guilt. Was I? I was so focused on my career, on securing our future, on paying for the life we'd built. Maybe she was right. You just need to give him a break, she'd advised, squeezing my hand. He's under so much pressure with the new business. Be patient with him. And I was. I was patient. I was supportive. When he said he had to fly to Aspen for a weekend conference with potential investors, I packed his bag. When he had late-night strategy sessions that kept him out until midnight, I left a plate of food warming in the oven. Every excuse, every lie, I had swallowed whole, seasoned with the trusting love I had for him. And every lie had been co-signed by the concerned whispers of my own sister. I now realized that every one of his late nights perfectly matched a night Chloe was supposedly out for girls' night or at a yoga retreat. They hadn't just been cheating. They had been conspiring. Gaslighting me in my own home, making me feel like the failing partner while they were laughing behind my back, spending the money I was killing myself to help us earn. The shower across the hall turned off. I heard their muffled voices, soft and intimate. My heart, which I thought couldn't break any further, split open again. The pain was so physical it felt like my ribs were cracking. I looked at myself in the mirror. My charcoal suit was still perfectly pressed, my lipstick unsmudged. I looked like the successful lawyer who'd left the office an hour ago. But the woman staring back at me was a stranger. Her eyes were hollow, haunted by a truth so ugly it had burned away everything she thought she knew. The woman in the mirror wasn't a wife anymore. She wasn't a sister. She was a prosecutor, and her case had just begun. I saved the audio file. Labeled it Evidence Exhibit A. Then I uploaded it to a secure cloud server, creating 3 separate backups. I moved out of the bathroom with a predator's silence, my heels making no sound on the thick hallway carpet. The house was quiet. Too quiet. They were probably in the bedroom, getting dressed, preparing their masks of normalcy. My study was my sanctuary, the one room in the house that was entirely mine. I closed the heavy oak door behind me, the click of the latch sounding like the cocking of a gun. The pain was still there, a white-hot core in my chest, but around it, ice was forming. The hot, messy grief of the victim was freezing over, becoming the cold, hard precision of the litigator. I sat in my leather chair and opened Mark's laptop. It was a sleek silver MacBook he was so proud of, a gift from me after he'd landed his last big account. For 3 years, his password had been the same. It was a sentimental choice, he'd told me. The day they brought their first dog home from the shelter. Another lie. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I typed CHLOE 0518. Her name and her birthday. The screen lit up, granting me access. A bitter, humorless laugh escaped my lips. The arrogance. The sheer, insulting arrogance. I started with his email. It was mostly work, client correspondence. But there was a separate folder. Labeled Henderson. The client that supposedly required all those late-night meetings. I clicked it open. It was filled with emails between him and a single contact, CM not Chloe Mills, his sister-in-law. CM. The initials of her maiden name, Charlotte Moore. Clever. The subject lines were all business. Tuesday strategy session. Portfolio review. Q3 projections. But the contents were anything but. They were love letters disguised as corporate speak. Tuesday's strategy session confirmed was code for a hotel reservation. Need to review the portfolio details in person meant I miss you. Client wants an extended consultation translated to let's spend the whole afternoon in bed. Next, I opened his web browser. The history was a roadmap of his betrayal. The Palmer Hotel downtown. Every Tuesday afternoon for 6 months. The Marriott 4 client dinners on Thursdays. A boutique hotel in Madison for a weekend he told me was a solo golf trip. It coincided perfectly with the weekend Chloe was at her yoga retreat. I opened our joint credit card statements online, statements I'll admit I hadn't looked at closely in years. I managed my own finances, I trusted him with his. What a fool I had been. The charges were all there, a digital paper trail of his infidelity. Room service charges for champagne and strawberries. Late checkout fees. Spa packages for two. But the real bomb, the one that turned this from a simple, sleazy divorce case into something much darker, was in his cloud storage. A folder labeled Apex. His new venture. The one I'd funded. I clicked it open. Inside wasn't a business plan. There were no client lists, no marketing strategies. There were bank statements for a shell corporation. And a copy of the loan document with my signature neatly forged on the second page, authorizing him as the sole operator of the account. I saw our money, my money, flowing out. A $4,200 payment every month, I realized, to a property management company. A quick search confirmed my suspicion. It was the monthly rent for a luxury apartment in Cherry Creek. The leaseholder? See more. There were receipts for designer dresses, expensive jewelry, and first-class airline tickets. He wasn't just cheating on me. He was robbing me. He and my sister had orchestrated a long con, using my trust and my hard-earned salary to finance their secret life. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was grand larceny with a smiling face. The fury that had been slowly freezing inside me now began to burn. It was a clean, pure rage. I worked with methodical speed, my fingers flying across the keyboard. Screenshot after screenshot. Every hotel bill, every incriminating email, every fraudulent bank transfer. I saved each image, time-stamped it, and sorted it into a newly created master file on my secure server. The file was labeled Anderson vs. Anderson Divorce Proceedings. I pulled up the last piece of the puzzle. The report from the private investigator I'd hired 3 weeks ago. My lawyer instincts had been screaming at me that something was wrong, even if my heart didn't want to listen. The report was concise and brutal. 24 photos in total. Mark and Chloe kissing outside her secret apartment. Holding hands in his car. Entering the Palmer Hotel together, his arm wrapped possessively around her. Each image was date-stamped and geotagged. Courtroom-quality evidence. I leaned back in my chair. The file was complete. 6 months of their lies, their theft, their betrayal, all condensed into a single, digital weapon of mass destruction. The sounds upstairs had long since stopped. A floorboard creaked above me. They were getting ready to come downstairs and lie to my face. But they had no idea. They thought they were the players, and I was the pawn. They had no idea that I had just flipped the board. The game was mine now. And I was about to rewrite the rules. If you're still listening, please help me by liking this video and commenting the number 1 below. It lets me know you've given me a like, and it tells me you're right here with me on this journey. Your support is an incredible encouragement for me. Please, comment the number 1, and let me tell you what happened next. I didn't wait for them. I walked out of my study, leaving the laptop open, the glowing screen a silent testament to their crimes. I moved through my own house like a ghost, a specter of the woman who had lived here just an hour before. In the kitchen, I went straight to the wine fridge. I bypassed the celebratory champagne, that felt like a cruel joke now. Instead, I pulled out a bottle of The Prisoner, a dark, heavy red blend we'd been saving. It felt appropriate. My hands were perfectly steady as I uncorked it. The sound echoed in the silent house. I took down 3 glasses. Not 2. 3. I poured a generous measure into each, the deep red liquid swirling like blood in the crystal. Then, I carried the 3 glasses into the living room and set them down on the solid oak coffee table. A perfect triangle. 1 for me, 1 for my husband, and 1 for my sister. I settled into my favorite armchair, the one with a clear view of the staircase, and waited. I didn't have to wait long. Footsteps on the stairs. It was Mark. He appeared in the doorway, a vision of casual deceit. His hair was still damp from the shower he'd shared with my sister. He was wearing a fresh polo shirt and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. A guilty smile. "Hey, Liv," he said, his voice a little too bright. "Didn't hear you come in. How was the office?" "The office was fine, Mark," I said, my voice even in calm. It seemed to surprise him. The Sterling Pharma case settled. I made senior partner. His smile widened, this time with genuine relief. "Babe, that's incredible. We have to celebrate." He started towards me, his arms open for a hug. "We will," I said, holding up a hand to stop him. "But we're waiting for our other guest." He froze mid-step, confusion flickering across his face. "Guest? Who?" And right on cue, the stairs creaked again. It was Chloe. She was trying to be quiet, trying to slip out the back door as she'd probably done a dozen times before. But our old Victorian house betrayed every secret. "Chloe?" I called out, my voice sweet as poison. "Could you join us? I have wonderful news to share with my family." The footsteps stopped. The silence in the house was absolute, a tightening noose. Then, slowly, reluctantly, she appeared in the doorway behind Mark. She was wearing one of Mark's old band t-shirts over her jeans, the soft, worn cotton hanging loose on her frame. Her hair was messy, her lipstick gone. When her eyes met mine, and she saw me sitting there, so calm, with 3 glasses of wine on the table, her face went as white as a sheet. "Liv," she whispered, my name a confession on her lips. "Hello, sister," I said, gesturing to the sofa. "Please, both of you, sit. We have so much to celebrate." Mark's eyes darted between me and Chloe, the panic finally dawning. He was a cornered animal, searching for an escape that didn't exist. "Liv, what's going on?" he stammered. "You're acting strange." "Am I?" I took a slow sip of my wine. "I feel remarkably clear, for the first time in 6 months." He opened his mouth to lie again. I could see the denial forming on his lips. "Look, whatever you're thinking, it's not what it looks like." "Really?" I placed my glass down and picked up my phone from the side table. I didn't say another word. I just pressed play. The sound that filled our beautiful, sunlit living room was obscene. It was the audio file from less than an hour ago. 2 minutes and 37 seconds of their sordid betrayal, crystal clear. Chloe's breathless moans. Mark's deep groans. Her voice, crying out his name. I only let it play for 10 seconds. It was more than enough. I pressed stop. The silence that followed was deafening. Chloe let out a sound like a punctured lung and sank onto the sofa, her face buried in her hands. Mark just stood there, his jaw clenched, his boardroom confidence shattered into a million pieces. "Because it sounds exactly like what it looks like," I said, my voice dangerously soft. He found his voice, a ragged, angry rasp. "You recorded us? How could you? How could I?" A real laugh, sharp and humorless, tore from my throat. "That's the question you're asking right now?" I shook my head. "But really, the recording was just for ambience. The real evidence is far more documented." He stared at me blankly. I continued. "Like the charges at the Palmer Hotel every Tuesday for the past 6 months. Or the Marriott for your Thursday client dinners. Or should we talk about Apex Innovative Solutions?" The color drained from his face. He looked like he'd been physically struck. "That's a funny little company, isn't it?" I went on, my voice gaining strength with every word. "It has only one expense, funding my sister's secret life. The luxury apartment in Cherry Creek? The one you rented under her maiden name?" The shopping sprees? All paid for with the $150,000 loan you tricked me into signing for. Chloe looked up, her face streaked with tears. Liv, please. I never meant for this to happen. We fell in love. Love? I stood up, the calm finally breaking, replaced by a wave of pure, righteous fury. You call this love? Conspiring to defraud your own sister? Lying to my face for months while I worked myself into the ground to pay for your little fantasy? You don't know the first thing about love. You are thieves. Both of you. I walked over to the fireplace and turned to face them. They looked pathetic. Broken. Good. The divorce papers will be filed tomorrow morning, Mark. Our prenuptial agreement is ironclad, and the adultery and fraud clauses mean you walk away with nothing. You have 48 hours to get your personal belongings out of my house. After that, I will have them thrown on the street. I then turned my attention to Chloe. She was sobbing openly now. As for you, I said, my voice dropping to an icy whisper. You are no longer my sister. You are no longer welcome in this family. You are dead to me. I set down my wine glass, untouched after that first sip. This meeting is adjourned. See yourselves out. I didn't watch them leave. I walked out my front door, leaving them in the wreckage they had created, and got into my car. I didn't drive aimlessly. I drove straight to the Capitol Grill, the upscale steakhouse where my partners had a table waiting to celebrate my promotion. The irony was so thick I could taste it. I walked in, smoothed my suit, and put on the smile I reserved for opposing counsel right before a devastating cross-examination. For the next hour, I was the picture of success. I laughed at their jokes, accepted their congratulations, and discussed the future of the firm. I ordered a dry-aged ribeye, medium rare, and a glass of their best Cabernet Sauvignon. But underneath the facade, my mind was a whirlwind of cold, calculated action. This wasn't just a personal betrayal. They had made it professional. And that was a battlefield where I was queen. During a lull in the conversation, I excused myself. I didn't go to the restroom. I stepped out onto the quiet patio, the cool Denver air a balm on my skin. I pulled out my phone. The execution began. My first call was to Kevin, Mark's business partner. He was a good man, a family man, who had invested his life savings into their marketing firm. He answered on the second ring, his voice harried. Liv. Hey, what's up? I've been trying to reach Mark all afternoon. That's why I'm calling, Kevin, I said, my voice all business. Mark won't be reachable. And as of this moment, he is no longer your partner. I'm emailing you a secure file right now. I suggest you open it immediately. While he was talking, my thumb was already tapping, sending the encrypted file I'd prepared. Anderson versus Anderson. I heard the ding of his email notification. A file? What is this? He asked, his voice laced with confusion. I heard him clicking. Then, silence. A long, stunned silence. Jesus Christ, he finally breathed. Liv, are these hotel receipts? Is this a bank statement for a shell company? It is, I confirmed. He's been billing fraudulent hours to your top clients to cover his affair. Worse, he took out a $150,000 business loan under false pretenses. He has exposed your firm to massive liability, Kevin. He's committed fraud. I had no idea, he stammered. I knew something was wrong. His numbers were down, he was always unavailable. You need to call an emergency partnership meeting tonight, I instructed, my voice firm. You need to lock him out of all company accounts, sever his access, and get your lawyer on the phone first thing in the morning. He has compromised your entire business. Right. Yes. Of course, he said, his voice shaking with a mixture of shock and fury. Liv. I am so sorry. So am I, Kevin, I said, and ended the call. One down. I took a deep breath and dialed the next number. This one was for Jennifer Klein, the Senior Director of Marketing at Serenity Wellness, Chloe's biggest sponsor. Chloe was the face of their Authentic Living campaign, a brand built on trust and wholesome family values. Jennifer and I had worked on a contract negotiation years ago. We had a professional respect for one another. "Olivia, what a surprise," she said, her voice warm. "Calling to talk about Chloe's contract renewal?" "Actually, Jennifer, I'm calling about a serious violation of her contract's morality clause," I said, getting straight to the point. "I'm sending you a file. I think you'll want to see it before your next campaign goes live." I sent the same package. The photos. The evidence of the affair with a married man, her sister's husband. The details of the financial fraud. The silence on her end was even longer than Kevin's. When she finally spoke, her voice was ice. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Our entire brand is built on authenticity and family values. We can't be associated with this. This is a catastrophe." "I understand completely," I said, my voice sympathetic. "I'm her sister, so this is difficult. But my professional obligation is to the truth. Her contract has clear reputation protection clauses. This behavior is a direct violation. Our board will have an emergency meeting in the morning," she said, her voice now hard and decisive. "Her contract will be suspended immediately pending termination. We'll be pulling all of her content from our platforms by midnight." "You're making the right call," I said. I hung up. 2 down. I went back to my table, slid into my seat, and took a long sip of my wine. My steak had arrived. It was cooked to perfection. Across the table, my partners were laughing about a golf game. My world was on fire, but in this room, everything was normal. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Kevin. "Emergency meeting done. Partnership terminated, effective immediately. We're pursuing legal action for the fraud. Security is escorting him from the building now." Another buzz. An email from Jennifer Klein. "Board has been notified. Official termination notice is being drafted. Our legal team will be in touch regarding recovery of advance payments." I cut into my steak. It was delicious. They had thought their affair was a secret, a passionate little game played in the shadows. They had no idea they were playing on my field, by my rules. And I had just checkmated them in less than an hour, all before my dessert arrived. The next 24 hours were a blur of falling dominoes. My phone became the command center for the demolition of their lives, and I monitored it all with a detached, clinical precision. The first text came from Kevin before sunrise. "Our forensic accountant is going through Mark's books. It's worse than we thought. He's been overbilling for at least a year. We're filing a formal police report for embezzlement this morning." So, it wasn't just a divorce and a firing. Mark was now facing potential criminal charges. His professional reputation wasn't just damaged, it was incinerated. Next came the public fallout for Chloe. Serenity Wellness didn't just pull her content, they released a public statement about parting ways with brand ambassadors whose personal conduct does not align with our core values of family and authenticity. They didn't name her, but they didn't have to. The influencer gossip blogs picked it up within an hour. By noon, her other sponsors, the fitness apparel brand, the organic skincare line, the local coffee chain, had all dropped her, referencing similar morality clause violations. Her carefully curated career, built on a lie of trustworthiness, had evaporated in a single morning. But those were the professional consequences. The personal ones cut deeper. I knew I had to be the one to tell my parents. I couldn't let them hear about it from a gossip blog or a pitying phone call from a friend. I called them at 8 a.m., asking them both to get on the line. "Mom, Dad," I started, my voice steadier than I expected. "I need to tell you something about Mark and Chloe." I laid out the facts simply, without emotion. The affair. The 6 months of lies. The financial fraud. I told them I had filed for divorce and that Chloe was no longer a part of my life. The silence on the other end of the line was heavy, broken only by my mother's choked sob. My dad, a quiet, stoic man who had always been Chloe's biggest defender, finally spoke. His voice was gravelly, hollowed out by a pain I knew all too well. "Olivia," he said, and the finality in his tone chilled me. "As far as I am concerned, we have one daughter now." And that was it. My mother cried, asking how this could happen, but my father was resolute. Chloe had crossed a line from which there was no return. The family I had grown up in was fractured, perhaps permanently. The victory felt bitter, coated in the ash of what we had lost. Then came the calls from friends. They trickled in all day, a litmus test of loyalty. Some calls were awkward, from mutual friends of Mark and me. People like Sarah, who I'd known for a decade. "Liv, we heard," she said, her voice full of false brightness. "We're so sorry you two are going through this. We want you to know we're here for both of you." "Both of us?" I asked, my voice sharp. "Sarah, there are no both sides here. He committed fraud and slept with my sister in my bed. You can be there for him, or you can be there for me. You can't be there for both." Her stammering reply told me everything I needed to know. The social circle we had built over 15 years was cleaving in two. But other calls were different. My friend from law school, Maria, called ready for war. "What do you need?" she asked, no preamble. "A place to stay? Someone to slash his tires? I know a guy. Just say the word, Liv." Her fierce, unwavering loyalty was a lifeline in the storm. By evening, I was emotionally exhausted. I sat alone in the cavernous living room of my now empty house. The 3 wine glasses were still on the coffee table. I picked them up, carried them to the kitchen, and methodically washed and dried each one. As I placed them back in the cabinet, I felt a profound sense of loss. It wasn't for Mark, or even for the sister I thought I had. It was for the life that was gone. The easy laughter at family dinners, the shared holidays, the comfortable history. All of it, collateral damage in a war I never wanted to fight, but one I had been forced to win. 6 months passed. The seasons in Denver changed, the autumn leaves giving way to the first snow, and with it, the white-hot anger inside me cooled to a detached calm. The divorce was finalized with ruthless efficiency. As predicted by the prenup, Mark walked away with nothing but his personal belongings and a mountain of legal debt. The criminal investigation for embezzlement was ongoing, hanging over his head like a guillotine. I had kept the private investigator on a small retainer, mostly out of a clinical curiosity. His monthly reports read like a slow-motion car crash. After being evicted from my house and fired from his firm, Mark and Chloe had, predictably, moved in together. Not into her chic Cherry Creek apartment, which she'd been forced to abandon when the money dried up, but into a cramped, depressing 2-bedroom rental in a faceless suburb. The passionate, forbidden affair, once fueled by the thrill of secrecy and stolen moments in luxury hotels, couldn't survive the harsh reality of unemployment and mounting bills. One PI report from October was particularly telling. Subjects observed in a verbal altercation in the parking lot of the apartment complex. Female subject, Chloe, was heard shouting about employment prospects. Male subject, Mark, responded with accusations about her useless social media career. Altercation lasted approximately 10 minutes. The fairy tale had become a grim domestic drama. Mark's professional reputation in Denver was toxic. After weeks of failed interviews, he had apparently taken a junior-level sales job in Omaha, Nebraska. A city where no one knew his name. The man who once commanded a 6-figure salary and managed multi-million-dollar accounts was now likely cold-calling dentists and chiropractors, trying to sell them digital ad space. It was a spectacular fall from grace. Chloe's attempted comeback was even more pathetic. She had tried to rebrand herself on Instagram, pivoting from wholesome lifestyle to raw and authentic survivorship. She posted grainy photos with long captions about overcoming adversity and learning from mistakes, never quite specifying what those mistakes were. It didn't work. The internet has a long memory. Every post was flooded with comments from strangers and former fans. Authentic like sleeping with your sister's husband? Overcoming the adversity of being a home-wrecking fraud? Screenshots of the hotel receipts and news articles about her sponsors dropping her became permanent fixtures in her comments section. She was a digital pariah. Her follower count hemorrhaged daily. I learned from a mutual acquaintance that she had eventually deleted all her social media and was working as a cashier at a Trader Joe's back in our hometown, living in our parents' basement. My father, true to his word, apparently treated her like a ghost, speaking to her only when absolutely necessary. My mother, heartbroken, tried to maintain a strained relationship. Their great love story, the one they had deemed worthy of destroying two families, had crumbled under the most mundane of pressures, reality. The thrill was gone, replaced by the grinding misery of paying rent, the humiliation of public disgrace, and the resentment of two selfish people trapped in the consequences of their own choices. I didn't feel happiness when I read the reports. The schadenfreude I expected never came. Instead, I felt a strange, quiet emptiness. They were no longer villains in my story. They were just irrelevant. Their lives were a wreckage I was viewing in my rearview mirror, growing smaller and smaller as I sped down the highway toward my own future. 1 year to the day after my life shattered, I was sitting on the terrace of a private villa in Napa Valley. The sun was setting over the rolling hills of grapevines, painting the sky in strokes of orange, pink, and gold. A glass of exquisite Cabernet Sauvignon was cool in my hand. This was the trip I had planned for Mark and me. I had come alone. And I had never felt less alone in my life. The past year had been one of radical reconstruction. I had renovated the house, exorcising the ghosts of my past life with new paint, new furniture, and new art. The guest bedroom Chloe used to stay in was now my spacious home office, a place of power where I planned my legal strategies. My career hadn't just recovered, it had skyrocketed. My handling of my own high-stakes, high-conflict divorce had become something of a legend in Denver's legal circles. I was the lawyer clients sought out when they needed a shark, someone who understood that winning required not just skill, but steel. Just that morning, an email had arrived from the firm's managing partner. My name was being put forward for the top position. At 43, I was on track to become the youngest managing partner in the firm's 100-year history. David and Emma's affair had inadvertently launched my career to heights I might never have reached otherwise. The loneliness I had dreaded never materialized. It was replaced by a peaceful, intentional solitude. I reconnected with true friends, the ones like Maria who showed up with wine and righteous fury. I even started dating again, cautiously, my criteria forever changed. I was no longer looking for charm, I was looking for character. As the first stars began to prick the darkening sky, my phone buzzed on the table beside me. It was a text from a number I didn't recognize, but I knew who it was. The final ghost. It was Chloe. I hesitated for a moment, then opened it. Liv, I know you'll probably never read this, or you'll just delete it. I don't blame you. But I have to say it. I am so sorry. Not just for getting caught, but for everything. I was lost and selfish and I destroyed the most beautiful thing in my life, our family, for something that meant nothing in the end. Mark and I are over. He's in Nebraska, I'm at Mom and Dad's. My life is a mess. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I hope one day you can find peace. I'll always love you as my sister. I read it twice. The words of a broken person, grasping for an absolution she hadn't earned. 6 months ago, this message might have ignited a spark of anger or even pity. But tonight, sitting here under the vast, starry sky, I felt nothing. It was like reading a letter addressed to someone else, a woman who no longer existed. My finger hovered over the screen. I thought about the pain, the lies, the theft. I thought about the woman who stood frozen in her hallway, listening to her world end. And I thought about the woman I was now, strong, successful, and whole, on her own terms. I pressed delete. The message vanished. Some bridges are not meant to be rebuilt. They are meant to be burned to the ground so you can find a new way forward. I raised my glass to the horizon, the deep red wine catching the starlight. I wasn't toasting to their downfall. I wasn't toasting to revenge. I was toasting to me. To the woman who had walked through fire and hadn't just survived, but had learned to forge her own light from the flames. The real ending did belong to me, and it was more beautiful than anything I could have ever imagined. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It means the world to me to be able to share it. Every story has its lessons, and I'm curious what you take away from mine. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if my journey resonated with you, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more stories. It truly helps.